Billy Budd, Chapter 12. Not many days after the last incident narrated, something befell Billy Budd that more graveled him than aught that had previously occurred. It was a warm night for the latitude, and the foretopman, whose watch at the time was properly below, was dozing on the uppermost deck whither he had ascended from his hot hammock, one of hundreds suspended so closely wedged together over a lower deck gun that there was little or no swing to them. He lay as in the shadow of a hillside, stretched under the lee of the booms, a piled ridge of spare spars, and among which the ship's largest boat, the launch, was stowed. Alongside of three other slumberers from below, he lay near one end of the booms which approached from the foremast. His station aloft on duty as a foretopman being just over the deck station of the forecastle man, entitled him, according to usage, to make himself more or less at home in that neighborhood. Presently he was stirred into semi-consciousness by somebody who must have previously sounded the sleep of the others, touching his shoulder, and then, as the foretopman raised his head, breathing into his ear in a quick whisper, "Slip into the lee fore chains, Billy. There's something in the wind. Don't speak. Quick. I will meet you there." And who then disappeared. Now Billy, like sundry other essentially good-natured ones, had some of the weaknesses inseparable from essential good nature, and among these was a reluctance, almost an incapacity, of plumply saying no to an abrupt proposition not obviously absurd on the face of it, nor obviously unfriendly, nor iniquitous. And of warm blood, he had not the phlegm to negate any proposition by unresponsive action. Like his sense of fear, his apprehension as to aught outside the honest and natural was seldom very quick. Besides, upon the present occasion, the drowse from his sleep still hung upon him. However it was, he mechanically rose and sleepily wondered what could be in the wind, betook himself to the designated place, a narrow platform, one of six, outside of the high bulwarks, and screened by the great dead eyes and multiple columned lanyards of the shrouds and backstays, and in a great warship of that time, of dimensions commiserate to the ample hull's magnitude. A tarry balcony, in short, overhanging the sea, and so secluded that one mariner of the Indomitable, a nonconformist old tar of a serious turn, made it even in daytime his private oratory. In this retired nook, the stranger soon joined Billy Budd. There was no moon as yet. A haze obscured the starlight. He could not distinctly see the stranger's face. Yet from something in the outline and carriage, Billy took him to be, and correctly, one of the afterguard. "Hist, Billy," said the man, in the same quick cautionary whisper as before. "You were impressed, weren't you? Well, so was I." And he paused as to mark the effect. But Billy, not knowing exactly what to make of this, said nothing. Then the other, "We are not the only impressed ones, Billy. There's a gang of us. Couldn't you help at a pinch?" "What do you mean?" demanded Billy, here shaking off his drowse. "Hist, hist!" the hurried whisper, now growing husky. "See here!" And the man held up two small objects faintly twinkling in the night light. "See, they are yours, Billy, if you'll only—" But Billy broke in, and in his resentful eagerness to deliver himself, his vocal infirmity somewhat intruded. "Damn! I don't know what you're driving at, or what you mean, but you'd better go where you belong." For the moment, the fellow was confounded, did not stir, and Billy, springing to his feet, said, "If you don't start, I'll toss you over the rail." There was no mistaking this, and the mysterious emissary decamped, disappearing in the direction of the mainmast in the shadow of the booms. "Hello, what's the matter?" Here came growling from a forecastleman awakened from his deck doze by Billy's raised voice. And as the foretopman reappeared and was recognized by him, "Ah, Beauty, is it you? Well, something must have been the matter for you to stutter." Oh, rejoined Billy, now mastering the impediment, I found an afterguardsman in our part of the ship here, and I bid him to be off where he belongs. And is that all you did, foretopman? Gruffly demanded another, an irascible old fellow of brick-colored visage and hair, and who was known to his associate forecastlemen as Red Pepper. Such sneaks I would like to marry to the gunner's daughter, by that expression meaning that he would like to subject him to disciplinary castigation over a gun. However, Billy's rendering of the matter satisfactorily accounted to these inquirers for the brief commotion, since of all the sections of a ship's company, the forecastlemen, veterans for the most part, and bigoted in their sea prejudices, are the most jealous in resenting territorial encroachments, especially on the part of any of the afterguard, of whom they have but a sorry opinion, chiefly landsmen, never going aloft except to reef or furl the mainsail, and in no wise competent to handle a marlinspike or turn in a dead eye, say. Chapter 13. The incident sorely puzzled Billy Budd. It was an entirely new experience, the first time in his life that he had ever been personally approached in underhand, intriguing fashion. Prior to this encounter, he had known nothing of the afterguardsmen, the two men being stationed wide apart, one forward and aloft during his watch, and the other on deck and aft. What could it mean? And could they really be guineas, those two glittering objects the interloper had held up to his, Billy's eyes? Where could the fellow get guineas? Why, even buttons, spare buttons, are not so plentiful at sea. The more he turned the matter over, the more he was nonplussed, and the more uneasy and discomfited. In his disgustful recoil from an overture which, though he but ill comprehended, he instinctively knew must involve evil of some sort, Billy Budd was like a young horse fresh from the pasture, suddenly inhaling a vile whiff from some chemical factory, and by repeated snortings, trying to get it out of his nostrils and lungs. This frame of mind barred all desire of holding further parley with the fellow, even were it but for the purpose of gaining some enlightenment as to his design in approaching him. And yet he was not without natural curiosity to see how such a visitor in the dark would look in broad daylight. He espied him the following afternoon in his first dog watch below, one of the smokers on that forward part of the upper gun deck allotted to the pipe. He recognized him by his general cut and build, more than by his round freckled face and glassy eyes of pale blue veiled with lashes all but white. And yet Billy was a bit uncertain whether indeed it were he. Yonder chap, about his own age, chatting and laughing in free-hearted way, leaning against a gun. A genial young fellow enough to look at, and something of a rattle-brain to all appearance. Rather chubby, too, for a sailor, even an afterguardsman. In short, the last man in the world one would think to be overburdened with thoughts, especially those perilous thoughts that must needs belong to a conspirator in any serious project, or even to the underlings of such a conspirator. Although Billy was not aware of it, the fellow with a sidelong, watchful glance had perceived Billy first, and then noting that Billy was looking at him, thereupon nodded a familiar sort of friendly recognition to an old acquaintance, without interrupting the talk he was engaged in with the group of smokers. A day or two afterwards, chancing in the evening promenade on the gun deck to pass Billy, he offered a flying word of good fellowship, as it were, which by its unexpectedness and equivocalness under the circumstances so embarrassed Billy that he knew not how to respond to it, and let it go unnoticed. Billy was now left more at a loss than before. The ineffectual speculations into which he was led were so disturbingly alien to him that he did his best to smother them. It never entered his mind that here was a matter which, from its extreme questionableness, it was his duty as a loyal bluejacket to report in the proper quarter. And probably, had such a step been suggested to him, he would have been deterred from taking it by the thought, one of novice magnanimity, that it would savor overmuch of the dirty work of a telltale. he kept the thing to himself. Yet upon one occasion he could not forbear a little disburdening himself to the old Dansker, tempted thereto perhaps by the influence of a balmy night when the ship lay becalmed. The twain, silent for the most part, sitting together on deck, their heads propped against the bulwarks. But it was only a partial and anonymous account that Billy gave, the unfounded scruples above referred to preventing full disclosure to anybody. Upon hearing Billy's version, the sage Dansker seemed to divine more than he was told. And after a little meditation, during which his wrinkles were pursed as into a point, quite effacing for the time that quizzing expression his face sometimes wore, "Didn't I say so, baby bud?" "Say what?" demanded Billy. "Why, Jimmy Legs is down on you." "And what," rejoined Billy in amazement, "has Jimmy Legs to do with that cracked after-guardsman?" "Oh, it was an after-guardsman, then. A cat's paw, a cat's paw." And with that exclamation, which, whether it had reference to a light puff of air just then coming over the calm sea, or subtler relation to the after-guardsman, there is no telling. The old Merlin gave a twisting wrench with his black teeth at his plug of tobacco, vouchsafing no reply to Billy's impetuous question. For it was his wont to relapse into grim silence when interrogated in skeptical sort as to any of his sententious oracles, not always very clear ones, rather partaking of that obscurity which invests most Delphic deliveries from any quarter. And we'll pause here and go on with chapter 14 in the next video. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment below. I love you guys. As Tigger says, ta-ta for now.